The following program will make you want to grow things and experience new and wonderful dreams about your plants, garden, and garden design. Listener participation is strongly advised. Good evening and welcome to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board, send us an email right now. Our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And now, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to Down the Garden Path, where we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice for your plants, gardens, and landscapes. As landscape designers and gardeners, we think it is important and possible to have great gardens that are low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen. I am Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design. I've been designing beautiful gardens for homeowners east of Toronto for over a decade. With me is my co-host, Matthew Dressing.
Good evening, Joanne. Good evening, everyone. I am Matthew Dressing, horticulturist and landscape designer and owner of Natural Affinity Designs. Natural Affinity is a landscape design and garden maintenance firm servicing Toronto and the Eastern GTA. Joanne and I enjoy doing Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting, relevant, and helpful topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from each other, from our research, and from the guests that join us here on the show. As always, we welcome your questions via social media, emails, and phone calls.
That's right, and we want to thank you for joining us on this live portion of Down the Garden Path. You can always check out past shows of Down the Garden Path on your favorite podcast app. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new content, and please like and share or even leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
That's right.
That's right.
Well, welcome. Can you believe that it is the beginning of April?
I know. It's hard to believe.
Crazy,
and it
crazy.
is weird not seeing each other.
It is weird, yes. All this, COVID's got us locked in our houses. We're doing it over remotely, social distancing. But we still enjoy getting together and being able to bring you guys an information-packed episode of Down the Garden Path. And as you know, with a new month comes a new topic. So this month, we're going to talk all about lawn care.
Excellent.
When it comes to the show everyone's been waiting for. When it comes to our lawns, we're a little bit fanatical. But this month we're going to discuss what it takes to get a beautiful lawn. From Lawn Care 101 to artificial turf, pests and diseases, and everything in between, we've got the tips and tricks to get you growing a green oasis that'll make you the talk of your neighborhood. So tonight we're going to talk about our month-long discussion. We're going to start with just everything, just kind of an introduction to Lawn Care 101. So if you're listening at home, I know you've got lawn questions, and you'd like to join the conversation, you can reach us tonight in studio101@gmail.com. You can always reach us anytime. Joanne at down2earth.ca or me at Matthew@naturalaffinitydesigns.ca.
Excellent. Well, I think it's a good topic. It's always a popular one in the past. I know we've had a few past episodes where we've talked about lawn care, but it's always popular, and it's very timely this time of year.
Agreed.
And how are we doing our sound-wise, Gary? Just as a segue.
Oh, we're good. We're absolutely good. It's the phone, but people can hear you just fine. And we just want to, again, give out our email address. If you have any questions tonight for Joanne or Matthew, our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. Instudio101@gmail.com.
That's right.
Okay, thanks, Gary. So, Matt, it is early, right? So I'm glad that we're talking about this lawn care early spring, and we're kind of we're hoping that we're going to reach people before they really get out there and start doing things.
That's right. That's right. It is a little early to get out there. The lawn is still asleep. It is still squishy. It may still be covered in your leaves, depending on how anxious you've been so far this year. But it is still too early. We don't want to get out on it while it's all squishy and wet, or even squishy but still frozen underneath, because then the ground doesn't fully absorb everything. It hits the ice, and you get those spots where it just becomes muck, and you start to spin out or skid, and you just rip up the whole top, half inch to an inch of lawn and turn it into muck. Okay. So it is a little too early.
Okay. So what is our, let's say, first indicator that it's time to do something? And what might that something be?
Yeah. Right now, I guess the only thing you would really want to get out, and if you can get out and get on it, hopefully maybe you've got some from last year, but putting out some of your corn gluten, that would be the only real thing about this time of year that you'd want to go out on there. We kind of know that it's time to get out there as we start to see some of the greening up. We start to see some of things like the maples and some of the other buds starting to swell on trees. We can start to see some of the greening grass against the buildings and the cement. We know that the soil and things are getting warm enough that things are going to start to get growing. But right now, all we can do is put out on that corn gluten, because we know the weeds grow quicker or sooner than the lawn does. So we want to get out.
That's right. Yeah, I'm amazed, actually, even in the garden. Like, I'm amazed at seeing the dandelion, like the leaves of the dandelion. What is the weed that kind of has furry, fuzzy, like kind of really, like almost like lamb's ear type like leaves? Do you know the weed I'm talking about?
Yeah, and first one comes to mind is mullein.
Yeah, it might be that. Yeah, I'm noticing that in my garden already.
Does it become a big... It gets that big yellow stalk later on.
I won't let it. Yeah, it's funny because it's amazing how those things grow. It's in two places in my garden, but it's like right up against another plant. Like one is my Japanese maple, and one is my lilac, which are in the same bed, like a little ways away from each other. So it's tucked right up against the trunk of both of those things. So I'm really going to have to get in there and eat. It's not an easy thing to get out, because now I've got to go around consider the trunk of the trees.
Yeah. Yeah, so that sounds like it's a little tough to get at or get out.
Yeah, for sure. So would you say that because the weeds grow sooner than the grass, that if we fertilize too early, I'm not sure we're going to talk about fertilizing, but fertilizing too early will kind of get the leaves growing, or the weeds growing faster than the grass.
Yeah, I mean, if the grass isn't there and actively growing to be eating, then whatever you put down will either dissolve and it'll either wash away, or whoever is there, which is usually the weeds, will take up that food and ingest it instead. If you've tuned in and been following us along with our previous lawn chats, we know that we like to put on our winter fertilizer, and kind of jumping backwards or too far ahead. But you've probably put down a winter fertilizer. So that's kind of our fourth fertilizing of the year, which happens just as we're getting ready to go to sleep. And it should only still be partially dissolved on the lawn. So as the grass wakes up, the roots are going to start to wake up first, and they'll start to become active and draw in the higher phosphorus and potassium fertilizers, and that'll give them their roots, those engines to jolt forward and go up first. So right now, theoretically, you've already got fertilizer there that none of the plants you don't really need to do anything for fertilizer right now. Our winter fertilizer is finalizing its dissolve into the ground, whatever's still there, and then whatever's still dissolved in the soil will slowly be metabolized by the grass plants as we get into the season.
Okay.
So, the corn gluten too, if you end up putting down your corn gluten, remember corn gluten is, for those who may not know, that it is a corn protein, and it's used as a pre-emergent on our lawn. So corn gluten and cornmeal are different things. Meal tends to not have as much as the protein and is used for pets and livestock as a food source. But the corn gluten has more of that protein. But it naturally tends to break down into a high nitrogen and very low or non-existent, depending on who you get, the phosphorus and the potassium. So when you get into your corn gluten, if you're doing some corn gluten, you're adding some additional nitrogen already on top of what you might already have there anyways. So right now, there's minimal active growth. Corn gluten's all we need to do.
Okay.
As things dry out and firm up, we don't want it squishy and soft, we can go out and get all those leaves and things.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it does make sense. I think a lot of our listeners, here in Ontario, we're not able to do any, like, quote-unquote weed and feed or any herbicides that kill the weeds. So our only option is to do the corn gluten. So I know we've got listeners kind of all over Canada and the U.S., and so that might not be the case in your area. But if you are looking for more of an environmentally friendly solution, because a lot of that weed systemic, chemicals is really not good for you or the environment, right? For the humans or the environment.
Right. It's always best when doing any sort of pest or management to use the least toxic chemical or method available at the time, and then slowly go up from there. And then diseases that humans have, we can use certain drugs and they become immune. Plants and insects can become immune or resistant as well. So if you've got a couple low toxic methods available to you, try rotating them every 2 weeks, every 14 days, and attack them in different ways. That should break down some of that resistances as well.
Okay. And I've heard from some people that have tried the corn gluten and found that it didn't really work. But you've told me in past shows that it's actually more of a kind of an accumulative thing. So it because it's organic, it does take a little while. So the more often, not the more often, but you need to do it kind of in a couple of seasons, right? Like the spring, and then we do the fall, and maybe next spring, it'll really help us get a handle.
Yeah, it does tend to have a cumulative effect. So if you've applied it in the winter, and it's just kind of settled in, it's overwintered, it's coming back up, and you put it down, there's more protein in the soil, so it does tend to have more of a cumulative effect, and just basically blanket that yard and prevent those seeds from growing. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can do it season after season type thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like you were describing, right? Just to get to that better effect. Ultimately, we're all kind of working towards our goal of having a nice, densely planted lawn, lots of grass plants, nice and thick, and depending on the species and where you are, here in the GTA, it's our cool season grasses. We want to have them about that 3-inch long mark, or a little longer, but it's that nice, dense, healthy grass that's going to outcompete the weeds, and then you won't need anything like corn gluten or weed sprays because they'll be doing their own work.
Okay. So a question about when you're talking about the nice, thick, and healthy lawn, the one thing I find, especially in my neighborhood, is people are so keen to get out and start raking their lawn. So one, it is too early, but even in a little while, once things are really growing, is it really necessary? Is it really a good idea, or are you just kind of thinning out your lawn to really let the weed seeds take hold?
Yeah, if you don't really need to go out there, like you're not dethatching or there's not lots of debris on the lawn, you're just exposing it to more stress that you don't need to. It's weak, it's waking up, it might be strong in waking up, But it's kind of, its defenses are lowered. It's still growing. You don't need to be out trampling it and giving it extra physical stresses. So yeah, if you don't need to be on it, then you don't need to be on it. Don't go on it for the sake of actually just being on it. Yeah.
Why do you think people think they need to rake it though? Like, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those cleanliness and the perception of it, and I think we've dedicated ourselves so much to keeping it just so clean and perfect that I think it's part of that OCD, if you will. We just need to get it out and make sure it's giving it its best chance. But I don't think we know that we don't have to do that to give it its best chance. So I think it might be part of I'm totally losing the word.
Oh, okay. Just like a tradition or just a habit kind of thing.
Thank you.
And I think when we see one person in the neighborhood do it, then everybody thinks, oh, I should be doing it, right?
You got it. Oh, it must be time. Let's do it. Yes.
Or my dad used to do it, so I should do it.
Right. Oh, yeah, Dad used to do it all the time. Oh, yeah, we'd go out and we'd do it, and it was always this on a date or so-and-so's birthday or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Okay. So okay, so let's say we've done the corn gluten, and temperatures are warming up a little bit, let's say after Easter weekend. What are the next, most important things to do? Because, really, I know there's so many people that say, we need less lawn, but those that love our lawns, and I'm surprised we haven't got any lawn questions yet, but, what is the most rational, or which one makes sense to do next?
Yeah. So everything's woken up. We've got our corn gluten, or maybe we don't need the corn gluten. But as we get into the growing season, we can start to do our top dressing / overseeding and or fertilizing. So it becomes kind of those group of things that you can do. Some people like to fertilize first and then top dress, or top dress and seed and then wait so many weeks and then fertilize. I think it's kind of to each his own. I'm going to just kind of go over how I usually recommend doing it, but always start from the farthest or the furthest way back. So start from the farthest point on your lawn and work off of your lawn is how I like to do it, just so you're not walking over anything. But I like to start with the top dressing and the seeding. And if I'm going to use an organic fertilizer, I will put down the fertilizer at the same time. So.
Oh, okay. Well, because you're saying that there's no rush to fertilize if we fertilized in the fall.
Right. Sorry. And yes, as I say fertilizer, I guess I'm missing a step here. So top dressing and the seeding, what we want to do is we want to start to wait for that next step until we start to see some temperatures about 10 degrees overnight.
Okay.
So we do want it to warm up. So maybe most of April is gone and it's the beginning of May now. And I know it feels so much warmer in May, and we all get excited to get outside because things are greening and flowering. But it's that temperature that's really going to play that important role. So we want it to be 10 degrees overnight, that 8 to 10 degrees usually overnight, because you could put down the seed in the top dress before that, but you're not going to see any active growth. So I like to suggest waiting until you start to get into those ranges so that you can put that seed down. Usually at night it's 10 degrees. During the day it's closer to the 14, 16, 18, depending on the season and how it's developing. But then after that point, when we're in those ranges, we're going to start to see some growth of the seed. If you put it down too early and it's still too cool, nothing is going to happen.
Okay. Yeah, so there's no rush. I think people, and sometimes I think it's just the TV ads, for instance. They are starting already, and although I'm thinking most people are streaming these days, so they're not really seeing any ads, but, I think this is the time of year where there's lots of commercials about starting that, but there really isn't any hurry, and I think it really does, every year it changes because we never know when it's really going to warm up, right?
Right. It's all the weather dependent. It all depends on our weather. And like you had said before, we're talking from the GTA, Oshawa, Whitby, Ajax, that kind of area. If you're somewhere else where it's much, much warmer, we may be behind you by like a month or 2 months, right? If you're somewhere out in BC, California, Florida, where it's nice and warm, well, we might be behind you, and we might catch up to you as we go around the calendar year with what we're going to do. I see a question is popping in.
Excellent.
So Laura writes in, hi, Matt and Joanne. With this virus going on, a lot of people are outside already rigging their yards and cleaning up. I think a lot of people are going to be sorry for that. Stay off your lawn, exclamation point. Love you guys, from Laura. Thanks, Laura.
Yes, thank you, Laura. We agree, and it's really tricky because we know people at this time where people are home and they're running out of things to do, or they want to get out of their house and be in their fresh air, but they've got to stay on their own property, that it is one thing that they can do. So, all we can do is give the best advice, and later when they call in to say, why is this happening, we can, we know why, kind of thing, right?
Yeah. And you know what? Later on, because they've done it so early, like you were saying, Laura, it'll give them something to do to repair all the damage that they may have done, just in case it lasts a little longer.
Oh, gosh.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you're just joining us, we're here talking about Lawns 101. It's Lawn Month this April on Down the Garden Path. And you can send us all your questions. Write us at in studio 101 at gmail.com. Again, in studio 101 at gmail.com.
Excellent. All right, so you think doing the top dressing. Now, in order to seed, do you really need to top dress?
You don't.
Okay.
You don't. You can just seed. You can just put down seed. Just as long as it comes into good contact with the soil, it's got the temperatures, and it's got some moisture, which should be plentiful with the spring rains and the thawing snow, and just the ground moisture is generally higher, right? It should be okay. If you know that your lawn is really compacted, or it's just old and tired looking, it might need some rejuvenation in the soil, or just some loose soil for the grass seed to actually germinate and grow in and lock into. So just adding an eighth to a quarter of an inch to your existing lawn. That's all you need. The crown of the grass plant is on the soil surface. So if you go too much deeper, what you'll do is you'll start to bury and smother the crown. And then you end up with grass that just clumps that start to go yellow from the tips down, and they're just suffocating. And it's because you put too much soil on, basically.
Okay.
When you do put a top dressing on, I would say make sure it's good high organic matter in its content. You can just do straight compost, eighth to a quarter of an inch, and it basically will just feed the microorganisms in the soil, get the soil biology active, insulate that plant, that little grass seed, and give it a really good start. So if you can dress with compost or something else high in organic matter, that's going to give you your best start if you need to.
Okay. And what do you think? So top dressing, that's good. Where does dethatching come in?
Yeah.
Or aerating. Sorry, we've talked about that dethatching. Sorry, I mixed up dethatching and aerating. So there is a difference, right?
Yeah. So dethatching, so the lawn gathers the soil surface and the lower parts of the blades, dead grass, other debris, insects, stones, just usually another layer of organic matter that gets fairly thick, and it can start to smother the ground and prevent things getting into the soil and helping the grass plants. So dethatching is removing that layer of dead organic matter to increase air circulation, light, and water and nutrient penetration into that. A little bit of the thatch is okay, but when it starts to get really thick, that half an inch to a full inch, or it's just dead stuff in your grass, that's where you want to pull it out. The aerating on the other side is kind of like the extreme of where you can't put down compost or organic matter on your soil anymore, and have the organics kind of loosen the soil and rebuild the soil anymore. It's just so compact. Maybe you had kids, or last summer you hosted a wedding and it was kind of soggy or got squishy with everybody on. It dries, it pushes all the air and water and spaces out of the soil, and it just compacts. So the aerating is where you go through. Usually you get like a big mechanical gas-powered machine. You can get little novelty, like little sandals, where you can walk around with your mower in the summer and puncture holes into the surface. But it's basically breaking up or drilling holes into the lawn surface, allowing air and water and other biotics to get in there and fluff open and allow that air and water to penetrate again.
Okay.
So when do you
want to do that? Because sometimes I know in the past, sometimes they came around in neighborhoods and wanted to kind of knocked on your door and asked to do it, and I always kind of found that they did it too early. This year, with our little pandemic and quarantine, and it's not an essential service, so lots of landscapers are kind of on hold, and the whole industry is kind of on hold, holding our breath. And they wouldn't be classified as an essential service, so I doubt that they're going to be out there. Mm-hmm. So it may be a little bit harder to get done unless you own those sandals, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or your neighbor has, that, like you're saying, a kid that comes around and knocks on the door type thing. But you don't need to do it right now. So you can do it in the spring, but you want to wait until your lawn is at least 3 inches long. So we're looking closer to, mid to end of May, when we've got nice warm temperatures. We're sitting in that 16 to 22 degrees Celsius during the day. Forgive me for our American listeners. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. But that range during the day where we get lots of growth. If we dethatch or aerate too early in the spring, like right now, because what else are we going to do? What you're doing is you're disturbing the soil and the thatch that has trapped weed seeds. So now you're bringing them up to the soil surface, to the lawn surface, where the conditions for them are perfect to grow in and germinate in, because they grow quicker and with a lot less perfect growing conditions than lawn needs. So they're going to take advantage, and they're going to grow into those spaces where the lawn isn't actively growing. So you can actually encourage weed growth to a point with doing these activities now, while the lawn is still asleep and defenseless, or shorter and defenseless, not really moving at optimal speed or growth. So wait until you've got 3 inches of lawn. Wait till you've get to like the end of May, beginning of June, depending again on where in the world you are. That's what you want to wait till.
Don't you think that people think that then it's too late, right? Like they associate these things
with the
as to things they need to do fairly early in the season, as opposed to doing them when the lawn is really ready for them.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. The lawn is not ready for them just yet. Right, and we associate them with early spring. Yeah. The next best time to do it is, again, with that 3 inches or that longer grass, late spring, or mid to late spring, and then early fall, late summer. Again, when we're getting into those cool temperature ranges and the grass is actively growing at its best, because we want the grass to prevent those weed seeds from growing.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have a couple questions.
Excellent.
And I think they're both from the same person. They're coming in. So Monique writes, "Hi, I live in Toronto. I wanted to know if I could put down spring fertilizer now on my lawn. My lawn's pretty well cleaned. I was just wondering, please stay healthy." Thanks, Monique. Yes, you stay healthy too. Living in Toronto, it is a little early right now. Wait until you start to see some active growth, something actually happening on the lawn. Again, if there's nothing happening, if the plants are dormant, the lawn is dormant, you're putting down fertilizer that's going to dissolve with any rains or dissolve sitting on the moist ground, and it's basically just going to wash away. It's not going to absorb into the soil if it's still frozen, and if it's unfrozen and the plants are still dormant, there's no one there to eat it. They're asleep. I like to think it's like putting out dinner at 3 a.m. Well, if the family's asleep, no one's going to wake up to eat. Well, they might, but
Right.
no one's there going to be around the table to eat it, right?
Depends on how good it smells, but yeah.
Right. If it's Easter dinner.
Yeah, for sure. And Monique, we know it's hard to do. So I have to confess, I have a service. So I actually have a service that comes and does, kind of deals with my lawn. And they have a bad habit of telling me, in the evening that they're coming the next day so that I can't stop them from coming. So they actually came last week to fertilize, and I just think it's just such a waste.
Yeah.
So I am kind of disappointed.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were doing it because they were trying to get ahead of the ban on essential workers, like they tried to get it in.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a tricky situation. So Monique, if you could hang on a little bit longer, and it's always good to know that you're not behind, right? That you're ahead of the game. If you've already purchased it and you're ready to go, then it's okay to wait a week or so or two.
Exactly. And waiting for the right time when the plants are going to feed and they're going to get the most benefit out of your fertilizer is going to save you money in the long run and have a better result in your garden and a better or a less of an impact on the environment around you. You're not wasting fertilizers that are just going to, dissolve off into our water.
Excellent.
Our water table and stuff.
Now, were you saying, was that both of Monique's questions, or did she have a second one?
Right. So there's another one. It looks like it came from Monique or another Monique. Hello, I'm a listener in. Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, I just got another follow-up question from Monique. Okay. So Monique writes. So her cousin has the same address. So Monique's cousin's writing in. She's a new listener from Bismarck, North Dakota. So thank you. Oh, and her name is Patty. So Patty's writing in from Bismarck, North Dakota. Thank you, Patty, for writing in, and we love knowing where you're from. Thank you for the show. I'm already learning a lot from you. I was looking for a show that would tell us what to do with our lawns. Please try to stay healthy, Patty. Well, Patty, I think you found it.
That's what we're here for. And I'm just checking about her gardening zone in North Dakota to see what planting zone she's in. So she's 3-4. So she's a little bit behind us then, even, right? Or is that ahead of us? No, behind us.
She'd be behind us. So your Patty, you're a little cooler than we are here in Toronto. There's a GTA here in Ontario. So your temperatures at 10 degrees at night to start to put out your grass seed might come out a little later for you. It might not be, mid to end of April, beginning of May. It might begin beginning of May, mid-May to end of May. Depends on how your weather develops there. Yeah. So, stay tuned. So hopefully, Patty, you'll get a lot from the show. We're going to keep going. We're going to go right to the end of spring. And all month, every Monday night at 7 p.m. here on realityradio101.com, we are talking, except for next Monday, Easter, no Easter show, but we are going to talk all about lawns. So, and you can always write us your lawn questions here at instudio101 at gmail.com.
Excellent. And we're even going to talk about lawn alternatives in a couple weeks as well, which we know that that's always a popular one. Talking about artificial turf. And I've been trying for a couple of years now, or a little while, to get someone on the show. So we're excited to talk about that topic. So we definitely, if you're curious, we want you to tune in, and we'll be letting you know when we do that show.
That's right. We'll have a full outline right at the end of the show. Awesome. Okay, so we've talked about we got our spring. We're going to wait to fertilize until we start to see some growth. We want things actively growing. We're going to hold on to detaching and aerating until we get some good length, 2-3 inches. We're probably going to be the end of May, beginning of June, again, depending on where you are. Corn gluten is the only thing we want to do right now in the spring. Wait till we start to see, again, some warmer overnight temperatures and the lawn dry out a bit before we get out and get raking those leaves. and cleaning up that debris. Remember that debris is housing some beneficial insects. Our warriors out in the garden are just asleep right now, and they're anxious to come out, but they need some warmer temperatures to go. The only other thing I think that maybe haven't talked about quite yet in spring, and correct me if I'm missing something, is maybe grubs and nematodes and things. Should we dive into that?
Yeah, we definitely can talk about that. I think that's something people are never sure of when to do it, right? And I think with our lawn, we're trying to jump in and do stuff a little soon. So if we're holding off, but there is a window as far as dealing with the grubs, right?
Right. And so the window, depending on where you are, is usually the soil has to be 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. And you can just take out a thermometer, your meat thermometer, and jam it into the ground.
Yeah, really? Well, our meat thermometer really...
You may want to use a different thermometer, or use that one just for the garden.
Okay.
But take the temperature, because then they can survive. We've had John Robertson from Natural Insect Control. He does, their company does live biologicals. The garden center I work with, we get our nematodes from them, and they monitor all of southern Ontario. So you could write them. You could also just kind of check your average soil temperature as well. But as long as you've got that range, that soil temperature, you can put the nematodes down. And then depending on, again, where you are, you've got till about the first or second week of June. And then it's over. That window for spring nematodes is gone.
Wow.
Yes, because then they start to pupate under the soil and become their adult form. And then the nematodes will have no effect. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's pretty much nematodes in a nutshell. The other thing that I was kind of excited to find was new in Canada, at least, for our Canadian listeners. There is a new grub product out by Scott's, and I haven't seen the literature. I couldn't find my literature, but I believe it is Grub Begone Max that's now available north of the border. And so it's kind of taking us back to those familiar days where we have a granular that we're putting down on our lawn and we're watering it in, and it takes out the grub. I don't think it's a chemical base though, and I may have to do my research, and maybe we'll touch on it again. Maybe I'll update it. I'll find the stuff, and you can follow us on our Facebook and our Instagram accounts, and I'll post what it is exactly there for our Canadian listeners. But basically, yeah, there's a new product out there for Canadians, going back to those days, just to sprinkle it on and kill all those grubs.
So could it be Scott's Grub Begone? The advantage of being on the show at home, guys, is that I can access my computer, access Google. So Matt, would you think that would it be Scott's Grub Begone Max?
Yeah, and that's what I've got here too, and I think so as well. And yes, here the active ingredient, Bacillus thuringiensis subspecies galliarii strain. So yeah, it is a bacteria that we're sprinkling on and dissolving into the ground, and the bacteria will travel through the water and in the soil and kill the grubs that way and infect the grubs that way. So that does look like what it is, because we use Bacillus thuringiensis here. We're still able to use it in Canada.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. So that could be, so they're working on different options. Nematodes is like you said, is the other option. But I know people would love. I know there's a little bit of work doing the nematodes. So the thought of people being able to just spread it and leave it is probably very appealing, right?
Most certainly. It goes with just ease of application, low maintenance. You don't need to buy an extra container to applicate it down or apply them to your lawn and hook it to the hose. So there's a lot of steps that's just kind of removed from the whole process that way. So yeah, this looks like it might be a good game changer. The one thing to keep in mind though is it is still an organic control. It's not a chemical, it is a biological control.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that, but keep that in mind, meaning that it's Like the effectiveness isn't going to be.
The effectiveness will be there if applied properly, but it's what we kind of see with chemicals versus biologicals is that instant factor. We don't have the spray it and kill it kind of thing.
Right. And do you think it's a bit of the accumulative as well, where
just going off of my experience with some of the other Bacillus thuringiensis, because we have like BTK, for example, just a short form of the three names of the bacteria. It is fairly quick acting with the caterpillars when you spray it on different plant material, and the caterpillars get infested with them or infected with the bacteria. It is fairly fast acting, that one. So like a week or so from what I've seen. So I'm wondering if this one is going to be as quick, but I wonder if you actually need as much, like a cumulative type thing. And it's probably like the nematodes, when they run out of food, or like when they run out of food, they will basically just starve and slowly vanish.
Okay.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. If you've used it before, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Studio101@gmail.com. And share us what you think with Grub Begone Max.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear from our U.S. listeners. Are they using the chemicals? Is the trend, is it kind of state by state or community by community? Are you using more of the biological remedies for grubs? Or even if it's, are grubs an issue all over the North America? Or is it just an Ontario thing?
Yeah, no, good question. We'd love to hear from you there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can write us in here. The other thing, if you maybe don't want to send us an email, but you'd like to continue that conversation, you can find us Down the Garden Path Podcast, at Down the Garden Path Podcast, on Facebook and Instagram. And you could leave your responses there as well. We can interact offline or off the air as well.
And because we don't have a listener tonight, or a guest tonight, Gary, there's phone numbers as well if somebody actually wanted to phone in.
No, just emails tonight, because you guys are on the lines.
Okay. Oh, there you go.
We're on the line. Oh, my goodness.
You're on the line, correct.
Okay. So just email. So we want to hear your lawn care questions or lawn care dilemmas at instudio101@gmail.com.
And going to the emails, we actually do have Ryan has written in. Ryan says, hello, folks. First-time listener from Richmond Hill, Ontario. Already, he has all in caps, exclamation point. The aeration folks are already coming around. Ryan jokes, should I cough on them? No.
No, Ryan. No.
If you have the common cold, maybe. But talk about taking advantage of people. Possibly. I mean, I don't know if they're out there taking advantage, but it's maybe more of a point of education.
Yes.
They're out there, they know it has to get done, but they're not educated on the timing of doing it. And I think that maybe if they knew that you don't know, that might be, but yeah. So, I always say invite the kids or whoever's coming back, invite them back at the end of May. If you want it done and you want to give them your business, that's awesome. But just make sure that you tell them when your timing is good. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and I would say a month from now, don't you think? In mid-May instead of mid-April. Well, we're not even mid-April, but I think it's definitely the second week of May at least.
Right. We're still a good 3 to 6 weeks away before, depending on the weather. I mean, it looks like it can have an early spring. Hopefully the warmth holds and it'll be sooner than later, but we're definitely waiting still.
Yeah, so I'm really intrigued that they're already out there, Ryan. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, Ryan, for the first time.
Yeah. Hopefully a long-time listener, and thanks for letting us know what's going on in your area. I have not seen or heard anybody around my area. I know I live in an apartment, so I don't have them knocking on my door, but I don't see them around my area doing anything or any signs either, so good to know.
Yeah, no, and I haven't seen them out in mine. Like I said, I was disappointed in my weed lawn care people that they fertilize too soon, but I have not seen anybody out with those little aerating machines. So that is good. So we've talked about grass, like all the things that we should be doing with like normal lawns. I have a few questions for you, Matt, in the sense that some people have been posting pictures of now that the snow is melted and now that stuff, they're looking at their lawn and they're seeing different things. Like some people are seeing like a real yellowing in areas where like the grass is really gone. And some people are actually seeing like rings, like little rings in their lawn. Do you have any info? I'm putting you on the spot all the way from my house to yours.
And I can't even see it either.
I know.
It could be some winter kill. It could be some damage just from the snow. Maybe there was an ice spot or it was just a weak spot in the lawn already that just woke up and it just didn't survive the winter. One of the things, and just as you go saying about the ring thing, one of the things that we get, especially in the seasons where we get lots of snow depth, is our snow mold. So it's kind of like white rings or white circles. Just kind of look just all white and fuzzy. It's usually on longer grass where the grass compresses and the moisture and the warmth can stay in there and the cool mold grows. Maybe you can email me the pictures.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, it was actually a Facebook post, but I was on there trying to find it, see if I can find it on one of the Facebook gardening groups. And they said something about, the people responding were saying that it was like fairy rings. And I'm like, well, what in the world is a fairy ring? So I was kind of curious.
Yeah. Hard to say without.
And I'm not going to be able to find it, on this spot kind of thing. So I'm not going to be able to do that, but I can try. Usually the fairy ring tends to be more referring to like where the mushrooms tend to be. So you'll usually see what happens is there's something organic under the soil that's been buried, or some high thing of organic matter, and a mycelial network has taken advantage, and you get like a little ring of mushrooms that have grown up and that they grow out in amongst your lawn. They're not going to hurt your lawn. Nothing's going to do it that way or damage it that way. There is also, and I was just trying to remind myself of the disease name, but there's a fungus fairy ring as well, and it's just kind of like yellowy, and maybe is this more the picture like a yellowing arcing kind of ring, and they can be fairly large or kind of medium size, different depending on the fungus and the grasses that are there, but it is a fungus that attacks the lawn that way, and you'd apply it, remove the lawn, or apply some fungicides. I'm trying to find the words. Fungicides and other things to kill it that way as well. Okay. I just sent you the picture. So that's, so the rings and snow mold are a couple of other things. We can come back to that once you see the picture, but I also wondered about people that struggle with, well, one, mushrooms, like what to do with mushrooms, and two, moss. I mean, moss is usually a symptom of water, but usually once you have it, and some people actually love it, and I personally love it. I wish I could have more of it, but sometimes people really don't like it.
The mosses, you mean?
Yes, yeah. So are those things that we need to treat deal with? I don't think the mushrooms are really growing early spring. That's kind of more of a summer thing. But do you have some tips on solutions for both of those that maybe our listeners struggled with last year and they know they're coming up again this year?
Yeah, the mushrooms, to start with, there's not too much you can do with the mushrooms. They're kind of feeding and growing on organic matter that's under the soil, and their mycelial threads are hard to kind of get rid of. So you have to really just excavate that out. And how far that goes down, they can go down pretty deep. Depending on your soil, it might be a little bit more shallower, but excavating is kind of the way to get rid of all of those. Outside of that, it's totally natural. I mean, without fungus, pretty much all of life would be gone, but you can basically just pick them up and dispose of them, and eventually they'll burn through the food source, trying to regenerate, and they'll just go dormant again until they find more organic matter.
Okay.
So
if you're mowing over them, like you're not spreading that, like if they mow and they mow down and they mow into other areas of the lawn, like you're chopping them up, it's not like you're spreading them or anything.
If the mushroom was ready, if it was opening and it was ready to spread out the spores, you might be, if you're mowing over it. If the spores are mature, you might be just spreading them out. Nothing that's going to like infect humans or animals or anything like that. And again, if it's only going to take advantage if it finds the spot and the food, the organic matter to feed on. So, yeah.
Okay.
But,
so it's better to cook them and then toss them, like maybe toss them into your compost.
Yeah. You can throw them in your compost. Again, if there's some active spores, though, and they're in your compost, making sure that your compost cycles and heats up to kill and break down those spores as best you can. But for sure, but nothing that's going to harm. It's more of a sight thing for us in aesthetics.
Right. And so in the past, I thought it was something to like that you needed to sprinkle lime on your lawn, that your lawn was too, I want to say sweet or too something, and you needed to kind of discourage that by adding a lime, acidic. Isn't lime acidic?
Lime is more basic or neutral, so it'll bring up the pH.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I've heard people do that too. I haven't read anything or seen anything on that. It just kind of disflavors the soil and the exchange of nutrients. Just going into the pH, right, and all that. So changing the pH might slow the availability, but I haven't seen that's a cure. I could understand that it would slow it down, but not to remove it. Yeah.
Okay. Did you see the picture?
I do, and it does look like the fungal fairy ring.
Okay.
It does look like that one. Yeah. Sorry, were you saying something?
No, I was going to say that 130 people responded. so everybody has an opinion, as to what it was caused by. So it's kind of interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it does look like the fairy ring, the fungus. Yeah.
So we talked about the mushroom. So did you say what the? Was I too busy listening to the mushroom part that I missed the fungus part? What can we do for the fungus?
For the mushrooms, you mean?
No, sorry. So is there a difference between the fungus? So the fungus and mushrooms are the same thing?
Yeah. So you could try doing a light fungicide for the fairy ring, the other fairy ring. That's not the mushroom fairy ring. But again, it is more of a fungal spore type thing that's in the lawn. So you could remove the spores, excavate it, or try watering in something like your garden sulfur or a wettable agent, and just kind of watering it in and killing those spores from spreading.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And what else should we cover? I mean, the time always flies, but we've got a little bit of time left.
Yeah. What did you want to cover?
I mean, are there any other questions? If we've got a couple more minutes, so if you do have any other questions, please email us at instudio101@gmail.com, and we will get to your questions.
And you know what? Two have just arrived.
Oh, there we go.
So Sherry writes in, "Hi, love the show. We are allowed to use a lot of pesticides here still in New York. They're regulated, and we are not really doing any more damage than all the golf courses and the highways and the byways and the private hotels, etc., that are using this stuff on their lawns. They do a great job when used properly. However, as I say, things are regulated in means of percentages of chemicals in the bags. More people use the pesticides rather than the organic things." Yeah. So Sherry's just kind of commenting back to our previous conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, and Ontario had that big argument or explanation or whatever, comments as far as the golf courses versus residential. I think you just have to think about, I mean, unless you're a golfer and you're out there, if you're not a golfer, then when you're doing all those chemicals on your lawn, it's affecting you. That's the thing. Like, it's a long-term kind of effect of us personally. And I know here it's still allowed on golf courses, but it's also regulated, and they're also switching to do a lot of different things. And lawns are irrigated. Golf courses are irrigated so much more too. So yeah, I mean, I think commercial properties is always trickier, and there's not much we can do about that. But I think considering our water table and what we're doing in our own yards, I think that's the kind of where the pesticide ban, herbicide ban came about in Ontario. So.
Yeah, and I think like Sherry said too, they do a great job when used properly. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people weren't doing it properly, and kind of like when we're talking about the timing of things, like they're putting down excess chemicals to kill grubs when the grubs aren't even in the soil. Mm-hmm. So they're pounding on piles of poison month after month after month. It goes nowhere. It doesn't get absorbed, and it just kind of leaches out. But
right.
Yeah, you are definitely sure. You're totally correct. Yeah, when used properly, for sure. And then you have so much percentage in the bag. That's cool too. Yeah, and you can only have so much legally, etc. So
yeah.
Thank you definitely for writing in, and thanks for letting us know what's going on in your part of the world. We like to know where everybody's from and what's going on.
That's right, and I hope you're staying safe in New York.
Yes, stay safe in New York for sure. Tom also writes in. Tom's writing in, hello from San Diego, California, a ghost town. We are in full bloom right now with our gardens. Too bad no one is really out enjoying them. Stay healthy. Enjoy your show, Tom. Well, thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. So I'm curious. I know people can't be out. You can't even be outside in your own yard. Here we still can be outside in our own yards, although it's a little early. So that's interesting. But you're doing the right thing, and we hear things that are getting on the West Coast getting more under control. So that is good news.
Yeah, and it sounds like a beautiful time down there right now. Everything in bloom and nice and warm, and that's awesome. We're jealous, Tom.
Yes.
Well,
we definitely are. So for those that are growing like Tom, mowing height is always with the grass, right? It's always a hot topic that I'm sure we'll talk about later on in the month at different episodes. But I think I actually did see somebody in my neighborhood, even though grass isn't even growing, he was mowing his lawn with the mower. And so I think some people just love it to be so short. But, the damage, again, that they're going to get the more weeds, and they're going to get a bit more challenges, more drought, more goes dormant faster because it's so short, right? So there is a lot of advantages of letting the grass grow a little longer.
Yeah, and now that it's still soft and squishy, they're compacting the daylights out of it, which shrinks that root zone and makes it even worse for all that heat and drought stress.
That's right. Well, I think this was a great show. I hope we covered, I know we have a few past shows that you can look on our podcast app at Down the Garden Path podcast. We've done some past shows on lawn care as well, but I think this was a good one for 2020, don't you?
I agree. And stay tuned the rest of the month. It's not next Monday because we are taking our Easter holiday break. But stay tuned. We are continuing our discussion about lawn and everything you need to know to get that lawn nice and green.
That's right. On April 20th, we've scheduled to have artificial turf with Brian Park on, and I'm sure Brian's going to be home, so I'm pretty sure he'll still join us, but we will confirm that. And we want to just thank everybody. Everybody stay safe at home, and we hope you can reach us, again, even after we're off the show. Once again, I'm at joanne@downtoearth.ca, and Matthew's at Matthew@naturalaffinitydesigns.ca. And if you email us here at instudio101@gmail.com, Gary will definitely get those emails to us if you have further questions. Or please join us on our Facebook page. So Google or search in Facebook for Down the Garden Path podcast, and you could join our Facebook group, and that way you can ask us questions anytime, right, Matthew?
That's right. At Down the Garden Path podcast for Facebook and Instagram.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you.
Everybody.
Yeah, thank you for being on the air again.
I hope you're all staying safe and happy and healthy. Hope the social isolation isn't going to drive you too crazy. Spring is on its way. Thank you, Laura, Monique, Patty, Ryan, Sherry, and Tom for all of your questions. Thanks for joining us down the garden path. And thanks everyone else for joining down the garden path as well.
All right, and we'll talk to you soon.
That's right. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.